Hello and welcome to the GAK.co.uk Guitar Shop podcast. I am your host Mark Packham. Who is with me this evening?
Hello, my name's Jay. I'm the assistant manager here in the guitar store.
Hello, my name's Matt and I'm the manager.
And I'm Joe and I'm here for bass-related queries.
I totally nearly forgot my job role there.
Did you?
I did. I started saying something and I was going to say something completely different.
It's quite similar to real life.
I don't understand what that means.
We have to tell you every day what your job is.
Oh, I see. I got you. Assistant manager.
Yeah.
Ass man.
Yeah.
There we go.
Certainly an ass man.
Thank you.
How is everyone? All right?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Another week in guitars. How have things been?
Good. Yeah, good. So there's some good product releases this week.
Sure, we'll talk about some of those later on in staff picks.
Yeah.
Thanks to anyone who's joining us for the first time this week. We had a lot of new listeners last week. I just want to mention at the beginning of the podcast, if you like what you hear, or if you want to ask us any questions or you've got any comments and stuff, just drop us an email, podcast@gak.co.uk. I wanted to get that in because we only normally mention it at the end, and I thought, people might not have time to listen to the whole thing, and we want people to get involved and send us an email and tell us that you're listening, and maybe get involved. And maybe also we're going to do a live podcast at some point.
Oh yeah, we definitely should.
Yeah, we need to get that solidified.
We want a kind of audience, but we need a few more names, so please do email us, podcast@gak.co.uk. Anyway, tonight we're going to kind of mix it up a little bit. Last week we did kind of gear that we think is really good now and everyone knows is going to be a kind of classic in the future. This week I've titled this podcast Weird, Wacky, Wonderful and Wild. The gear that you've forgotten is actually amazing. So these are things kind of like gems that perhaps have been a little bit hidden, that maybe we haven't talked about on the podcast before, or that people might not be focusing their attention on, but stuff that's like really good.
Yeah.
But you've forgotten that it's good.
Yeah, stuff that
Like Baja Tellies.
You can't talk about Baja Tellies because we know that they're amazing.
Okay.
You just need to be quiet for this whole podcast.
Oh, okay.
The Blues Junior is also not on here.
It's the stuff that we don't necessarily see when we look straight up from my desk.
Yeah. So what I've done is gone through and
I
just
see Jay, so...
Well, we know that he's not amazing.
Hey!
He is definitely wacky, wonderful,
and weird.
Leave it out.
So I've gone through and just picked a few bits really that I thought we haven't really talked about much, but actually just are really cool things that people should maybe be focusing on and just checking out this week. First up, I thought we'd do some guitars, and the first one that I picked out is the Fender Modern Player Marauder. Matt, tell us what the Marauder is, because
such a good name.
Well, it's something it's not like a cheaper version of a Strat or a Tele, and it's not a Jazzmaster or Jaguar that are kind of in vogue at the moment.
It's a bit of a weird one because I suppose Fender, as we've talked about before, with sort of like FSR, and kind of like their pawn shop range, which was I suppose like a precursor to that. Really, they sort of came out a little bit before. Was sort of stuff that was never really existed.
Yeah.
But they sort of wanted to exist, and now they can sort of make it happen.
Yeah.
So it's like they had those 72 ones, which was like a 72 Tele humbucker, but with like a Strat Tele body bridge combination, and this is just part of it. So Modern Player range is the series that comes out of China now, so their new factory on that one.
We kind of discussed that before, in that I think what they've managed to do with the Modern Players is go, look, this is the first time we're going to build something Chinese with Fender on the headstock. Let's have a bit of fun with it. Let's do stuff that perhaps you can't get from the Mexican factory, you can't get from the American factory, and they've never made in Japan. And the Marauder is kind of typical of that, really.
It's a great idea to do that with the Chinese plant, wasn't it? Just so that it's not so directly compared with everything that comes out of Mexico and America.
Oh, I think that's one of the reasons why they've done it. If you're going to hold up like a Chinese, just a standard Tele against a Mexican standard Tele, that doesn't really do Fender any favours, because the Mexican standard Tele is going to be a bit more money and probably will be a bit better. Whereas with this, they're kind of giving you another option. Yeah. They're kind of going...
Exactly. Rather than giving you a grade, they're giving you an alternative, which is great.
Definitely. And it's allowed them to experiment a bit, and we've seen a few guitars. But
if it works, it works. If it doesn't, they kind of just go, we'll just try something else. But this one, it's an offset, I suppose you could call it.
You'd put it in that range.
Offset range.
Yeah. Well, we have. They hang with the offsets.
Yeah. But, the main thing is, I suppose, compared to anything else, like standard that Fender do is you've got a Jazzmaster neck pickup, I believe, in those ones,
Yep.
and then you've got a triple bucker pickup.
Triple bucker. The triple bucker is the anomaly. The triple bucker is weird. It's cool. It's a 5-way selector switch, I think, on the Marauder.
Yeah.
And most of the pickup selecting options are actually on the triple bucker.
Yeah.
So if you're all the way in the traditional bridge position, I think you've got all 3 coils selected of the triple bucker.
Yeah.
And then if you go to the next position of the pickup selector, I think you've just got the 2 outer coils of the triple bucker, making it a humbucker. And then it starts. You start bringing in the neck pickup, and it's,
They
I
did a
suppose-
very similar thing with the dimension bass.
yes,
as well.
yeah.
I suppose because it is effectively like a humbucker is 2 single coils. This is just 3 single coils just wired together. But
Do
you'll
you get
have
that much on guitars? Because we've had in basses, we've had it on the Ibanez ATKs. So.
Yeah, I mean they do. Seymour Duncan do the P rails.
Yeah, P rails is a bit different because it's kind of a half P90, half hot rails pickup.
Yeah, but you can wire it so it's a P90 or a hot rail. You can have a. I think
You can have all 3 together.
Yeah.
So it works like a triple bucker, I think. You can have all 3 together, or you can have the P90, or you can have the hot rails humbucker. You might even be able to get split the hot rails.
I think you can. I think you can split the hot rails from the
What
P90.
with a push pull?
Yeah.
What, so that they run in series?
Yeah. So
Or
you can
parallel?
effectively you could have in one humbucker spacing if you had like a Les Paul Junior.
Yeah.
You could put a P rails in, and then you could have a volume control that's push pull, and one would be P90, and then the down position would be a hot rails.
But I
Wow.
wonder, I need to look into this, but I think maybe you could probably coil tap even further than that and then split the hot rails
Yeah.
into a single.
Yeah.
So you could,
Oh, wow, okay.
Because each one will have like 2 wires, I suppose, like a ground and a hot. So yeah, you'd have like instead of 4 conductor wiring on a normal humbucker, you'd probably have 6 conductor. So
yeah, we should look into that for next week.
yeah.
I think we should maybe do a pickup.
I actually
special at
just
some point. We should-
Yeah.
although we we do some spare parts. I had a customer telling me about a specific spare part that he'd ordered. They're called I think it's like they just call it like a gear stick, and it's like a 3-way selector, but it's actually like shifts, like a little.
Who makes that?
I don't know. I just think it's like
It's like
some
a
sort
Sega controller.
Yeah, but
That's
basically, but it
ridiculous.
means you can split humbuckers like in
I
stupid
instantly
ways.
want one.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the Marauder. So, just a little bit of background. Actually, we probably haven't talked about the Marauder. The Marauder was originally, the name comes from a '60s Fender prototype that was either around the same time or just after Jaguars and Jazzmasters. And the cool thing about them was they initially, the first prototype, the pickups were hidden under the scratch plate. So it just had a plain scratch plate with 3 single coils underneath. So it looks like it's got no pickups on it. And there was a few other prototypes that followed that had like just 3 single coils on top, and I think they tried Jazzmaster pickups and switched it around a bit.
Were they like super high output then?
Yeah.
Well,
I guess
yeah, I
they
guess so.
had to have been, to get through the scratch plate.
And I think that's why in this modern player series they kind of brought it back as something that kind of doesn't
Really exist. Yeah.
and following with the rest of that. So it's trem as well, right? It's a Strat style
Yeah,
trem.
and it's weirdly enough the body material is Koto,
Okay.
which I think is like where they were using Empress wood for
Those Telecasters.
for the tellies.
Those were
I think it's
brilliant.
just
Didn't they do that song Africa?
no, that was Toto.
Oh, okay.
Toto wood would be quite good though.
Toto would.
Yeah, I'm assuming for that because I mean guitar wise, resonantly it sounds just just as
very
good as anything
lightweight?
else. It is fairly lightweight, and I'd assume it's probably like more of like just a Chinese wood that's more readily available that holds similar tonal properties to something like old or ash that's slightly less expensive. Like on most squads they'll probably use like a basswood or something like that.
Agathis, things like
Yeah,
that.
but then again, you see those sort of woods crop up on really expensive instruments as well.
Isn't the Ibanez the Tosin Abassi? His £3,000 8-string Ibanez is made out of basswood.
Yeah.
Basswood's becoming a really respected wood now.
Yeah,
I think that kind of the differentiation between cheap woods and expensive woods, I don't think really exists as much as it did even 10 years ago when people were like, I've got to have an ash Strat. Like Alder was just like out the window really. People were just like, I just want ash. I want it to be swamp ash and be amazing. And now people are like, actually, Alder sounds really good. Basswood sounds really good for certain applications. Whereas, something like swamp ash, perhaps on an Ibanez, wouldn't sound quite as good because it's, it's slightly more dense bass would probably sound a bit brighter and a bit more aggressive. But so the Marauder, just a kind of nice option. The reason I put it on this list is because Fender don't do anything else like it, and they are actually really good. They sound aggressive and they sound totally different from anything else.
They come in great finishes as well.
I think the thing is,
actually, the Lake Placid Blue is discontinued.
Oh no!
Yeah.
So black only.
Yeah, black only.
We're just covering stickers. 200 and
it is kind of that sort of guitar, isn't it?
well, it's 269 quid, and I think the thing is, a lot of people have a main guitar that they want, and you wouldn't necessarily, if you'd gone out and spent, as I had the same conversation with someone today, if you'd gone out and spent 1,500 quid on a Strat and you played it all the time, and you wanted another guitar that was kind of cheap that you could just play, you probably wouldn't necessarily buy a Mexican Strat because you'd always still want to pick up your American one.
I think actually that would be like the worst thing that you could do.
Yeah.
Because you'd kind of be like, oh yeah, just got another guitar, I don't really play it because I've got a better one of the same.
Yeah, so I think something like this is cool because you're like, yeah, this is like this different, it's cool.
Yeah, totally. And that triple bucker gives you a sound that you're never going to get on a Strat or even really like a Les Paul because it does do something quite different to that.
Yeah, and it's not like a metal pickup either, it's not like, it does like fairly high output, but it's not like you plug it in and you're going to be doing like Megadeth or anything.
Yeah. So, another guitar that's kind of gone through a few changes really and has been in production for quite a while under various different guises. The Brian May signature, but made by Brian May Guitars.
So I saw one of these today, and it's one of those things. We've always got one hanging on the wall. We've always had one hanging on the wall, and it just sort of generally the sort of person who wants a Brian May guitar comes in with in mind to buy a Brian May guitar.
Yep.
I've sold a few over the years. One I sold to one of the guys who actually plays guitar on For We Will Rock You.
Oh wow, okay.
But yeah, the one that I sold today, I hadn't sat down with one for ages, so I got it out and sort of plugged it in, and I was like, there's all these switches, what's going on? And basically there's 3 pickups, 3 single coils, and they're actually Burns guitar pickups.
Yep.
They're like Burns, I can't remember the name of them. Trisonics, okay, there you go. So it's this, like, so you get that sort of honky 50s kind of sound.
Yep.
The pickups as standard are wired in series, which is always cool. You've got, and then you've got those 6 switches underneath. Obviously, 3 of them are pickups on and off, and then the other 3 are in and out phase.
For a long time, it's one of those guitars that if you hand it to someone and you're playing, this is cool, and they're like, so what do the switches do? And you're like,
yep.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah.
See in a bit.
No, but it's great. It's a really, really cool guitar. 24-inch scale length, which makes it the same as a Jaguar.
Yep.
So it's short scale, which is always awesome. I'm sure you'll back me up on this, Joe.
I agree. I'm a big fan of short scale. Rodriguez Lopez, for example.
There we go. But yeah, you get one of those, stick some 11s on it. It'll be massive. They're great. Really, really cool. Underappreciated guitars, which I assume is what we're
going
going
to get
with.
some history on it? Because they were originally made by Burns. Is that right? Or?
So
the Red Special.
Obviously, the Red Special was made by him and his dad.
Right.
When he was ages before he was in Queen.
Yeah.
Out of wood that came off their fireplace
apparently
mantelpiece.
it weighs a ton. The original weighs like 15 pounds or something ridiculous.
And then
that's insane.
Yeah, apparently
really
it weighs.
heavy.
It's made of like solid
oak, I guess.
Yeah,
it's from a
I think
fireplace.
it's like solid oak.
Something like that.
The trem arm, here's one for you, is a knitting needle. Apparently,
I heard there were parts from his washing machine used in it.
Probably, but so that's the original guitar, and then kind of between the period of him of kind of Queen sort of finishing up, I guess, or getting towards the end of their kind of career, towards the kind of early 90s. Just after that, a few companies made a replica. And then Guild were involved in...
So, sorry, he'd always played that one?
He's always played that guitar.
Okay.
And I think he's played tellies and other bits for recording, but that's like his iconic guitar. The one that he
well, that's what I always saw him with that. I just assumed he had a few options, and
I think that maybe at some point that was retired and someone made a really good copy of it and maybe he's used that, but at one point Guild were involved. And then this company, then Burns got involved to make a kind of replica, and that was probably 7 years ago, something like that.
No, I think it's longer than that,
Maybe
actually,
even longer
because
than that.
I think that the Brian May company the Brian May Guitar Company, I think it's early 2000s that this model came out. I think it's like 2001 or something like that. And that this actual model, this specific model, I don't think it's changed in 12, where are we, 2018, 12 years.
Well,
I'm sure it's 2001.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's, I think, part of the reason that it is kind of an overlooked gem, really, is that, like you say, they're always in stock. Really, people know that they want one when they come in. But actually, maybe we should start saying to people, look, yeah, you've tried a Strat, you've tried a Les Paul for that kind of money. Why not try a Brian May?
And the Burns pickups sound really unique. There's not really anything that sounds anything like them, and they don't sound like anything else. They kind of have like a sort of tone all to themselves. Really.
They're great. They're really, really great guitars. Do
you want to give us, just quickly, before we move on, do you want to give us a rundown on the spec?
So mahogany body, mahogany neck, 24-inch scale, Grover machine heads, dual truss rod, and Burns pickups, and then, like you said, with all the switching as well.
Yeah.
And
so
it's
pretty
glued,
simple.
glued neck.
And Jay, you were right. 2001.
It is 2001.
2001 was the year it was released, and it was hailed by Guitarist magazine as the best guitar of the year.
Wow, there we go. It comes with a bag as well, which is
and it's a good one as well.
It's a really good bag. They're like £600. And yeah, it comes with a really good Brian May signature bag.
Left-handed option?
I think there is a left-handed option.
Less colours.
Yeah, I think it only comes in red.
I think it might just be the cherry on the left.
I think, the antique cherry.
And they do the Mini May.
They do, yes.
They do the little travel one, the little Mini May.
Which is a 3/4 bolt-on-neck single pickup.
I think so.
Single pickup,
and
kind of kids guitar, which is nice. It actually is a really functioning, well built and well functioning little kids guitar, and it happens to look like a Brian May, which is super
and yes,
cool.
they do a left-handed version.
Yeah, I was
cherry
sure
only.
Let's move on to another kind of slightly smaller guitar, and one that I really rate. And do you know what I actually used a couple of weeks ago doing some recording?
You were playing bass on that recording?
I was, but we ended up using the guitar a little bit, and I'd sort of messed around with it a little bit in the studio. Just because the engineer had one there, and he's like, yeah, I've had this for ages. I can't really remember where I got it. And he's like, I think I might have got it from you guys. And I just sort of give it to bands to like try as an alternative to their guitar that they've got. It's the Epiphone Wiltshire.
Great guitars. Guitars. Mini humbuckers.
It sounded
like less than £300.
They look
short
fantastic.
scale. They look great. It's brilliant. I mean, I think they're great guitars.
Glued
really
neck.
50s.
Glued neck, yeah. Well, kind of like early 60s, I guess, is the guitars that they're aping, like those Olympics and the original Wiltshires and things like that. But they're just kind of no nonsense, really. I assume, Matt, have you got the spec there? Are they mahogany body on the Wiltshires?
Yeah, and like you say, glued neck. So, I for the money, that's just such a cool guitar, and even though they're mahogany, they're pretty lightweight because they're, fairly.
This is a thin body, and they're great. They're great.
The horn cuts are really high up. You've got like full access.
I think it's similar to an SG in that regard. Is that you've got like easy access to the top frets.
Well, I remember we had a Gibson one for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember this.
Yeah, I remember having a Gibson one for a while, and so many people tried the Gibson one and then was like, I'll just compare it, and so many people I think walked away with the Epiphone one instead
for 200 and what are they
250?
No, less than that. They're 229.
That's amazing.
It's ridiculous.
And like I said, I used it on a record this week, and it sounds really good. It sounds really aggressive because of those mini humbuckers, but also thick, like you say, because it's got the mahogany body, and it kind of counteracts the fact that the mini humbuckers perhaps aren't quite as bassy as a full size.
Yeah. Comes in that great iconic early 60s finish as well, TV silver.
Yes.
There's quite a few different options they do in that one.
It kind of had a bit of a resurgence recently because of the fella whose name I cannot remember, but he plays in My Chemical Romance.
Did the Phantomatic?
The Phantomatic, which was just, as far as I remember, it was just a standard model, but in white with a black scratch plate and black binding.
It's got full size humbuckers.
Oh, is it full size humbuckers?
It's not the minis.
Okay, right. But they were, I think that really gave it a bit of a resurgence. I think that did it a world of good. But that was a great guitar, really, really great guitar. I mean, a lot of people sort of came in and sneered and went, "Oh God, My Chemical Romance, blah 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 blah," and then sat down with it and went, oh wow, this is really good.
Yeah.
And ended up walking away with it, because that's what they do. That is a killer guitar.
Believe it or not, one of our most popular, most anticipated guitars of the last couple of years. I think we were just sold out for months. And months.
Absolutely. I think we had people phoning up left, right, and centre. I mean, it was a similar situation to the Little Martins, the LX1Es. They were so popular, and we just couldn't get enough of them. But I think they're still going, aren't they? The Phantomatics?
359, and it's got Epiphone's favourite toy that I like to fit on things at the moment, which is a kill switch, which is one of my favourite gadgets to have on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And Baritone as well, which I think is quite cool.
It's got a Baritone switch on it, doesn't it?
Awesome.
It's like a pretty feature-packed guitar, really. Kill switch, Baritone.
2
proper
full-size
that's
humbuckers,
wicked.
3-way toggle switch.
On that Chemical Romance note, we can never get enough of the Mikey Way Mustangs either.
Oh, those Mikey Way
man.
Mustangs are
So
brilliant,
cool.
absolutely brilliant guitars. Again, short scale,
Large flake finish.
silver, brilliant, great guitars.
Probably just over 200 quid as far as I can remember
Well,
price
you've
wise.
got to think about those things. We could literally not get one in stock long enough to hang it up on the shelf, and then all of a sudden Fender bring out the pawn shop Mustang bass, which is kind of a very, very similar spec. It's a Mustang
chunky
with a humbucker
humbucker,
in the middle.
Yeah, and again, we can't keep those in stock either.
Exactly.
So yes, so perhaps we shouldn't mention these on the podcast because they are appreciated gems.
Oh, yeah.
People are after them all the time. Boys, let's move on and do some amps. The first one that I picked out, because to be honest, I'd kind of forgotten that we were involved with doing them, and I've not plugged one in for a very long time, but I understand that you have. The Buddha Superdrive 18.
Yeah, a bit of a weird one because they were like, from what I can gather, I think they were a fairly, when we first started doing, they were a fairly big name company in the sort of world of boutique. But I don't think they could continue on with the amount of like demand I suppose they were getting, and they got bought out by Peavey. But a lot of the more expensive ones were still being made in the USA.
Yeah.
And at the moment, we've kind of got, I think they're, losing some models and gaining some models. So we've got them on like a crazy deal at the moment. So we've got like quite a few of them in stock that we're doing for like, I think half of what they normally were.
Okay.
And I think for that money, you get something that's just amazing. Sort of like hand-built, hand-wired, American boutique, like single channel 18-watt valve head for 700 quid at the moment.
Is that how much they are?
Yeah, they're 699. That's
crazy.
and they're
That's
like
so
a full size head as well. They're not
Yeah.
like a Messabugi Transatlantic. They're like a full size
And
head.
18 watts is more than enough to do most gigs.
Yeah. So basically, you've got what looks like single channel. So you've got just standard controls in the middle, but then on the volume you've got like a push-pull, which is your rhythm lead selector, which can be foot switched. And then you've also got standard 3-band EQ, and then you've got one for on the mid, you can pull it out and it gives you like a more modern scoop.
So it's single channel, but you've got some
so you've
like
got
voicing
gain
options.
and master. So it's like what you would have, I suppose, in a sense, the same as the Engels, where you've got a master A and a master B, and you set them two different volume levels.
Okay.
It's the same sort of thing. So you've got gain control, which is push pull, and then a master. So you set your master where you want it, and then you've kind of got gain 1 and gain 2, as it were, but they share the same EQ. Two L84s, so that kind of real sort of Marshall-esque sort of vibe, quite mid-heavy,
But
quite
from
chunky.
What I can remember, they're like quite classy sounding as well.
They're really bright. I mean, they've got like a proper valve rectifier in, and not like a solid-state rectifier or anything like that. Effects loop. I mean, it's kind of everything that you really want, to be honest. From just, especially if you're a player that kind of does a lot with the volume control, and maybe you've got like a nice overdrive pedal or something like that as well.
Good to see a full size, like full boxed single channel amp. Because nowadays single channels have kind of been reduced in wattage generally and put in a smaller box because they want to be kind of
and I think actually
portable.
sometimes the smaller box puts people off because they instantly go, "Nah, it's too small."
Yeah,
it's like, but you haven't, you got to plug it in.
Even plugged it in.
Yeah, no, it's not. And looks are still a thing with these, these things. And I think the Transatlantics are awesome. The Messabugi Transatlantics, but I think people look and go, that's be too small. It's like, you plug it in and you'll hear it's really loud. And it's the same as I think like for example, a classic one for me is always a Street Cube. Roland Street Cubes are 2.5 watts a speaker or something.
I hate telling people how many watts a Street Cube is.
Because they're like,
how many watts is that? So, it's like 2.5 watts. I don't want to be loud enough. It's like, no. they're not like the amount of watts, and this is something I think is quite important, and it's something that we perhaps
watts doesn't mean decibels.
Well, I think it's something that we sort of gloss over a little bit, and perhaps it is something that's quite difficult to understand. The amount, the link between watts and decibels is not exponential. The amount of loudness, for want of a better word, that you get from but I mean, I think it's an easy way to describe it. The amount of, in layman's terms, the amount of loudness that you get from the amount of watts you use depends on an awful lot of factors.
Yeah.
And one of the big things, especially with the Street Cube, is the fact that those speakers are designed in such a unique and incredible way. You've got two 6.5-inch speakers that are angled up and out, and they turn that 2.5 watts into, we cannot turn that amp up past half in the store.
No.
Because it is too loud, and it's 2.5 watts.
The thing that's unique about them and about Roland in general is that it's the same guys and the same manufacturers designing the power amps as it is the speakers.
Yes.
And they're one of the only brands to do that. Normally, people buy in the speakers from one place
from Celestion or whatever.
Yeah. And then they'll get the power amp from elsewhere. Whereas Roland have tested those and they've managed to get the maximum efficiency out of the combo that they've got.
And I think that's one of the things that you perhaps forget, or not forget. It's one of the things that goes into Roland's, unequivocal. Durability and reliability. They do more or less. It's all in house and it's all like sanctioned. And I'm not for a minute suggesting that Boogie, because they use Celestion speakers, all of a sudden it's like, well, it's not done in house. So I'm not calling into question Celestion's.
Don't diss my hometown, yeah.
Well, I'm not for a second calling into question their prowess or whatever, but it's more to do with the fact that because everything is done in house and it's like, right, we're using this power amp, these speakers, this is how they work together. Listen to how loud that 2.5 watts. It's about the efficiency, and that's something that Roland and Boss, which is something we hark on about all the time, but it is one of the things that they are completely unmatched by.
Yeah, absolutely, efficiency. Yeah.
Now, you talk about reliability and durability there in terms of the Roland stuff. I think one of the most durable amps that we've ever sold, and again, I've been working in the shop a long time, we used to sell a lot more of these than we do now, and the reason I think is that people have kind of forgotten about them a touch, and that's again why it's great to include them on this list. The Peavey Bandit 112.
Wasn't this your first amp?
No, I actually had a little Rage, which is like the 15 watt version.
Okay, right.
But the Bandit 112, I think, is the amp that all of my mates' older brothers had.
Yeah, well, it's like 80 watts, isn't it?
Well, actually, I'm not sure on the spec now because they've changed it a couple of times.
And you can extension speaker it up to 100, I think. But
that was always the classic thing. Like I'd go around to a mate's brother's house or mates' houses, and their brothers would be there, and they'd have a Bandit, an extension 112, and that'd be their gigging rig, and it sounded amazing. Well, and do you know what? Bandits still sound amazing.
I think they pack a lot of punch. They've got a lot on them for something like that. I mean, I think they look pretty decent as well. I think for something that's hitting that sort of price point, they look the part. I think they are such a good first gigging amplifier.
I mean, in terms of a hidden gem, I think they're just so good, especially if you don't want to spend a lot of money and you want something that's actually going to work for, realistically probably maybe more of like a rock orientated gig. When I think of
the Bandit, I think of and I'm sure that this wasn't used, but this is what I think of is Smash by The Offspring. I think of that, and this is harking back to what you're saying about someone your mate's older brother. So you go around there when you're like 15 or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, what's your brother playing? He's like, oh yeah, he's well into The Offspring. I'm like,
but we did all grow up on punk, which is maybe why we're
we
considering
love the Bandit.
But it kind of had everything that was great and perfect for punk rock. It was one of those sort of completely solid state amplifiers that could just give you all that sort of clippy, gainy.
Well, I'd still think, right, that if you're in a gigging, maybe do 2 to 3 pub gigs a week, and you just don't want any hassle. You don't want to mess with valves. You don't need any effects. You don't need like presets, digital front end, anything like that. The Peavey Bandit is the amp to go for.
They're still 2 or 3 channel and have reverb as well.
Oh no, but I mean they don't have any like there's no modulation, modelling or anything like that. It's just like a really quality bit of kit that's built really well, and it will stand up to the job, and it will do the job over and over and over and over again.
So we get like so many people now who come in and like, look, I don't want all the extras. I mean, as good as Mustang amps are, and Peavey Vipers, for example, people are like, no, but I
certainly think from a personal perspective that an amp without kind of a load of effects thrown in kind of makes me take that amp more seriously.
Well, I mean, for me, even remember playing guitar, when I started, I don't remember there being amps like Mustangs out that had like tons of effects in, and plugging into, I think I had a Bandit or a Rage, I can't remember, one of those. You just like, it was just clean, and then you had the cool switches. I think the switches were always just like those little...
There was like really like clicky, like really, they feel like chunky.
Like light switches. But
I think that describes that amp as a whole, really, and all the incarnations that it's gone through. And in my time working with them, I think I've seen 4 different Bandit styles, and it's stayed in the catalogue, and it's always stayed like super rugged and super usable. I just think because you can, when you add other features to an amp, it's kind of easier to market. Peavey have actually kind of gone the other way and taken stuff away from it almost, or kept it the same, which makes it difficult. It's a difficult sell, but actually, it's awesome.
I agree. I think you'll always have a core market with that sort of thing. I mean, I think kind of almost like a bass equivalent would be something like the Hartkey HA series heads.
Yeah.
They've been the same for like 20 years.
Yeah.
People still come and buy them because they're really good and really rugged.
So I still get a lot of people come in who've got like you probably remember these, like Mark, the old like Stage 100s from Fender, or the Rock Pros, which are the same sort of thing that have kind of just faded out of the catalogue, and people are like, I just want. In fact, I had someone today just went, look, I just want 100 watt.
Just want a 100 watt combo with no effects. I just want to be loud and not have to worry about presets or plugging it in via USB.
Or valves.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say actually, the place to point them is the Peavey Bandit.
Yeah.
Right, the last amp that I picked out, and we'll go through these fairly quickly because we've been going for quite a while already. The Gretsch G5222 Electromatic amp, which kind of goes back to this philosophy of kind of taking stuff away, and how these things have almost kind of gone a bit hidden because they don't have a big feature set to shout out.
I don't really know anything about this.
So it's single channel, single control. Is that right, Matt?
Yeah. It just says high to low.
Yeah. Perfect. It's they're not even 0 to 10. Just high to low. What's the output?
5 watts with one 6-inch speaker.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to that where you'd have, like an old Fender Champ, it's a similar sort of design where you'd have 2 inputs, and then you would plug your mic into one, and then your kind of guitar into another, and then they would sort of, in the 50s, obviously not now, but that's what it's have. So for kind of these small jam sessions or tiny pub gigs or whatever, and it's that sort of vibe really. But just 5 watts, 1 input, 1 volume.
They're very retro looking, and they're very retro sounding. Like they're super cool. I mean, they're perhaps a tad impractical if what you want to do is
if you want loud clean,
then you're buying the wrong amp. Yeah. But if what you want is something small that you can use at home to get like a cool sort of 50s like rock and roll drive sound, without buying a Fender Twin and turning up to 9.
Yeah.
They're absolutely brilliant. And like, what, 160 quid or something?
For people who haven't seen them, they're
looking incredible.
Like retro small box, kind of tweed covering, kind of brown grill cloth, and like proper leather handle as well.
They look great.
The reason I picked those out really is because I think, again, they're a kind of limited feature set, and perhaps that almost hinders them in terms of people knowing about them, because you can't plug them in USB, you can't save your presets on there. It's literally volume control with a high or low input.
Yeah.
You can't save your presets. Well, just don't
move the control.
Don't move the control.
knob.
Maybe gaffer tape over the top of it or something.
There you go. You get the same sound every time. Man, I wanted to talk about a couple of pedals. Let's do a couple of these on the list. First up, again, something that's been a thing for as long as I can remember. The Dan Electro Dan Echo.
Well, as you know, people who have listened to the early podcast will know that my first pedal was, in fact, a Dan Electro Cool Cat Chorus, which came from the same run as this, and they're still good. These pedals are still good, and the Dan Echo came from the same run, and it's just a wicked tape-style delay that just sounds wicked.
How does it differ to the real Echo? Because I really like the real Echo.
I think the real Echo lets
is
you...
that the tape one?
The one
Yeah,
that
but it's not. It's
looks
not
like a tape
It's not
machine.
tape. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
tape
not tape,
Echo.
sorry,
no,
I say that. I know that it's not.
But yes,
it looks
it's
like
real
one.
as in REEL as opposed to REAL.
In fact, because on the real Echo, and I will need to double check this, but I'm almost certain the thing with the real Echo is that you have vintage sound on sound.
You do. That is a feature
So
of
it's
the real
you
Echo.
basically have vintage tape looping on the real Echo. So you can actually loop very short passages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like you could on the old Apexes. But
I've seen a handful of post-rock bands using those for loops. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can go between solid state and tube, and you've also got the vintage style slider for delay time.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Where the
That's
Dan
awesome.
Echo is more like a little
conventional delay.
like a conventional delay pedal that models that very warm, very dark sounding echo from a tape, where it literally record onto a tape and then go through an erase head and goes.
Who doesn't want that sound?
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing is, we've talked about tape echoes before, and as great as they are, the reason that you probably don't see them as much now is because they're actually a little bit of a nightmare.
I know. I was just going to say, those tape echoes are brilliant.
Are you a big fan of them?
I'm a big fan of them. I'm a big
The
fan
real
of
Echo, or just tape echoes in
original
general?
tape echoes in general. I mean,
So am I. Don't get me wrong, but
as I've said numerous times, the Boss RE20 is my favourite pedal of all time. And this is like a sort of stripped back version of one of those.
And the good thing is, and if I remember, this one had just the LED on the top, but the range it came from all looked like 50s cars. I think the back end of cars.
Really?
Yeah, because there was one in the range, and I can't remember if this one had tap tempo, and they had two lights, like Cadillac lights on the back, and tap tempo flashed with the
Incredible
time, and the other one was like an on and off indicator.
Just to give you a bit more info on that, yes, they were Dan Electro were doing a kind of 50s inspired pedal range, and they did one called the Daddy O Wah, I believe it was called, which was it looked
like a car, didn't it?
Yeah, it looked like a kind of Cadillac, and the wah had a wah switch in the front end, which turned the left-hand brake light on, and then a distortion switch in the back, in the heel end, which turned the other light on.
And it was also in zebra print.
Yeah, it was zebra print. But these aren't like that. They do look kind of 50s, and the reason that I kind of picked them out again is because I think it's a bit of gear that is really overlooked these days, and I think it would make a great addition to kind of anyone's pedal board, and it just gives you a really good alternative that's kind of fairly inexpensive. What are they coming in at?
£79.
Compare that to most other delays on the market.
Well,
that's
I mean,
actually pretty cheap.
If you're looking at, I guess the sort of the quote unquote mainstream equivalent would be the MXR carbon copy, and they're like what, £120 now?
£120.
Yeah, I mean, great pedals, but if you want something a little bit cheaper.
Well, I mean, especially if so we've picked out a Gretsch amp here as well, and it's like plug that.
Oh,
into a
dude,
Gretsch amp
how
with a Gretsch
good
guitar,
would that? Oh, how good would that sound for that Gretsch amp?
Which it made me in my head change my staff pick for later on.
Intriguing. Let's do one more pedal, and Joe, you'll be able to help me on this, and this will, because it's a bass pedal that I've picked out, will also segue into a couple of your bass forgotten gems.
Thank goodness.
So
the first time Joe's had anything to say in 3 weeks?
Dust your
the
mic,
first time I've been interested in anything to talk about.
So the pedal that I picked out is my favourite synth pedal.
Really? Is it?
Yeah, I prefer this over the Mark Bass one.
Wow,
I prefer
I'm
this
surprised
over
about that.
An Electromatic mic synth.
I'm going to disagree with you heavily there,
Okay.
only because I play them. But I agree with you.
I prefer this over the Boss SYB5, which is their bass synth pedal.
So do
I prefer this over any other bass synth pedal that we've ever done. the pedal that we're talking about is the Digitech XBW bass synth wah.
I can't tell you how surprised I was the first time I tried one of these out. I didn't expect to like this at all as a bit of a pedal snob. But
do you know why I like it? One word: presets.
Exactly why I like it, because all the presets are actually different and actually functional, as in they all work differently and brilliantly.
Yeah, they're all sort of modelling a different synth type.
Yeah.
And what that means is that all the rest of the controls do a different thing for each preset you're on. But also with the control set pretty much anywhere, each of the presets sounds good.
Yeah,
so wherever you turn it, it just sounds good.
Hugely different from most other synth pedals.
Well,
this is one of those things for bass that it's you can find a sweet spot, but a lot of the time it's horrendous. Let's take, actually, for example, you compared it to the Boss, the
SYB5.
The SYB5. And actually one of the reasons that I realised that I preferred this is for the simple reason that the first time I plugged this in, I flipped to option 7 and realised, this isn't just a synth pedal, it has an auto wah on it, hence why it's called a synth wah. But you're comparing it to the SYB5, which doesn't have anything of the sort. It's just a dedicated synth pedal, because of course Boss also do a very, very good auto wah, but this has that.
Does it all.
It's got this really cool, like Daft Punky sort of.
Well, it's got an octaver kind of.
Yeah,
a sub.
It's got that like vocal like noises.
Yeah, that's right. You can choose a vowel start and stop, so
you
can have that sort of A-E-I-O-U to start and to finish.
What I didn't realise was on the effect output you can actually plug straight into like a mixer as well. Apparently it's got like some sort of like modelling in it so you don't have to go into a bass.
Yeah, a lot of the Digitech pedals that came out around that time, if you look at things like the Hot Rod and that from that same range, were they called X Series?
Yeah.
A lot of them had like a DI out, which had some sort of modelling on there that would allow you to go straight in for recording.
There's an effect out and a dry out, but I think the effect out allows you to go straight into a mixing desk without it sounding too harsh, because obviously like with the distortion, if you plugged it straight in it'd be a bit full on.
What I think actually makes them extra super underrated is that they are called the bass synth wah, and so I suppose predominantly you might buy it. You might look at it if you were looking for a synth pedal. If I came in and asked for an auto wah, I know I've already mentioned that it has an auto wah, but if someone came in and asked to try out an auto wah, you wouldn't necessarily point them towards this. But this is retailing at what?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Matt's just
his jaw literally dropped. This is something I was going to say. It's like, okay, so Mark prefers it to the Mark bass,
which is retails at around £200.
We're saying that it's got more features than the Boss SYB5, coming from a company who in general, are well known for their versatility and stuff. Pray tell, Matt Knight, how much does this pedal cost?
£36 and 9 pence.
completely metal chassis, very robust.
And actually, if you're a guitarist, the bass one sounds better for guitar than the guitar one does.
They're absolutely fantastic. I honestly.
The thing is you could just buy one of these. Just to have it at home. I tell you what, my first. I'm
buying one right now from our own website.
My first experience of these like bass synth pedals. Now you'll have to perhaps correct me here, but I was going through I was really jealous that Matt had an original RE201, and I was looking up videos on YouTube, and I was like, can I justify buying one of these? And I was looking up videos, and one of the first videos I found, and an incredible video, is a video of someone running just a Boss SYB5, nothing plugged into it, just the Boss SYB5 into the into the RE201 and messing around with it. You could do that with this, couldn't you? You could just have this plugged into your amp. And I guess I should be looking at you, Matt. You could probably just mess around with this at home.
Yeah.
For 30, that's cheaper than a night out at the pub.
In fact, I used to own one, and I think I may own one tomorrow because I actually now really want to buy one.
I was actually, do you know what I was thinking whilst we were saying this? I was like, I'm probably going to buy one tomorrow.
Gents, Joe Branton has said a fair bit about that, but maybe we should let him talk more in depth on some bass gear. What are the kind of hidden gems that you've picked out today to talk about that we may have overlooked?
Well, Do you think we'll get through all three?
Let's do a couple.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll switch the order around, and the first one I'll talk about is the Stagg upright bass.
The electric, the EDB 3/4.
Yes, that's exactly what it's called. You know, I can never remember that, and it's listed on our system simply as that, which makes it incredibly difficult to search for if you can't remember that. Yeah. All I ever remember it as is the Stagg upright bass, as it's the only one they do. But it's actually fantastic.
Yeah.
If you've ever wanted to get into double bass, or you know you're just thinking about trying it, they're incredibly affordable. You wouldn't immediately think, certainly Stagg aren't a company that you would especially think to run to for this sort of thing, and they're a fantastic piece of equipment if you're wanting to get into double bass, or you know, even if you just want to try it. I mean, they're so ridiculously affordable, kind of coming in at like under £400, which you certainly can't pick up a proper double bass for. And amazing if you don't have enough room for a proper double bass, because they're stick
They're
style.
so small.
For me,
They even come with a soft case with a carry bag.
Yeah.
You put it over your shoulder.
It's not something that I would necessarily think, oh yeah, I want to play double bass. But so many people come in and go, yeah, I'm thinking about starting. You're like, well, what? Where would you start? Like,
Yeah.
It's such an investment.
Well,
But the thing
exactly.
is,
It's a space investment as well. Think
yeah,
about housing.
totally.
I mean, I know we live in the middle of a city, so that space is a little bit
Premium, yeah. But it's one of those things. Like I remember being at school and sort of getting into guitar and thinking maybe I'll like start playing bass. All my mates play guitar. You know what's cool?
Upright
Double bass.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start playing double bass. It's like, where am I gonna store a double bass? How am I get the bus to school? How am I gonna get my double bass to school when I need it? So it's such an investment of not only time but, you know, logistics.
Well, yeah,
and something like this is just brilliant.
Imagine trying to carry a double bass even from here to the shop.
I mean, it took us 10 minutes to walk to your house from the shop.
But I mean, if you were carrying a double bass,
It would have been absolutely ridiculous.
Well,
absolutely ridiculous. I mean, like, one of the things I've always loved the harp. I think the harp is an incredible instrument. You know, it sounds wonderful. It looks amazing. People who can play the harp, I think, are like a order of magnitude above the rest of us. You know, quote unquote musicians.
they're on another plane.
But
There's
like,
a reason angels are always pictured playing harps and not basses.
They got loads of space.
That's very true. They've got loads of space. But you know, if you have ever seen anyone transport a harp in like a proper harp flight case, you know, not only is it harp shaped and therefore huge, it's got like a 3-tiered wheel system to let you get upstairs and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, it's such a nightmare. And I've seen double basses of a similar ilk.
I think I
And
love your segues more than anything else.
Sorry, but to wind back in. My point is that, you know, learning the double bass is such an investment. Even getting like a cheap, like entry level double bass, you're looking at, you know, you're looking at 4 figures easy. And so something like this is just is wonderful.
It was perfect for getting into it. The fact that it comes in a gig bag that you know, you can break it down into something that's smaller than a regular electric bass.
Oh, absolutely,
and pop
yeah.
it behind your sofa is absolutely fantastic. I also think actually something that they have a distinct advantage for me. Maybe not so much if you're moving on and into it, but certainly for me. The neck, in fact, the whole neck, including the fretboard, it's the whole thing's made out of maple, but the entire neck is covered in a kind of a thick lacquer, a matte lacquer, which makes the neck very fast, which I think is something.
Well, I think that's also important for double bass, because, you know, the first thing you want to do when you play double bass is go boom.
Am I
not? Yeah.
But double basses are always very, you know, you're only they're gonna be gloss, you know, thick nitrocellulose gloss necks, and it's going to take you a few years to wear those down into something that's a little bit speedier for you. So the fact that this comes like that is great. I just find them incredibly playable. But the first time I picked one up, I was really, really surprised and impressed. I think it's one of those things that you're only going to be surprised and impressed with if you get a chance to play them.
Yeah, we've started doing them more in store now.
We've got the Dean one in store, which comes with a proper rosewood board and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the Dean one is a markup.
Well,
but the Dean one's also on a slightly different price point.
Well, and also the Dean one is slightly different because the actual bass itself is on an electric guitar scale length. Or electric bass scale length.
It is, of course. Do you know what? I realised this the other day.
And it's also a flatter board. The idea behind the Dean Pace, which is their version, is that it's kind of electric bass scale length. It's a flatter board.
35, isn't it?
Yeah. Whereas the Stagg, the EDBs, they feel like, in terms of playability, they feel like an upright bass.
Yeah.
But they're obviously, they take up much less room. And they're much more affordable and much more usable. 7
finishes as well.
Oh, really?
I think
very nice.
Just good for loads of different styles. Like if you want to do more rockabilly, that's kind of cool if you want to take around. Or if I can see if you were like a bass player and you're doing like a functions gig and you maybe do like some slower blues numbers.
Yeah,
and you're
ideal.
Yeah, well, a double bass would sound better for that, but I'm not going to cut
And the thing is like, you could easily have your bass on your back, your Mark bass Traveller in one hand, and
they are perfect for double bass.
And absolutely, that's why I bring it up. Your Traveller in one hand, your your pedal board in the other hand, and your Stagg EDB on the other shoulder. Easy. They're so transportable. They're absolutely brilliant. I mean, how much are they? I don't even know how much they are.
Just under 400 quid.
369.
I mean, that's the same.
Crazy.
That's the same price as an Epiphone Les Paul standard.
Exactly.
It's
when you put it like that sounds crazy.
It's ridiculous.
Joe Branton, we got time to talk about.
Time for one more.
One more bass.
One more. Okay.
I'm going to say. You've written a little list of things here. Let's talk about the Warwick Alien.
I thought you would talk about the Alien. Yes, I completely agree. I've actually
it's got Alien in the name
before, so
it's what you want.
Yeah, well, I think the Warwick Alien is absolutely fantastic. For me, I think it was a little bit of a revolution on the acoustic bass front, which I'm not an especial fan of. But the Alien is absolutely brilliant. You can get it in 4 or 5 string. It's made by Warwick, so the necks are as playable as you like. Really great construction, big fat body. They've bothered with a Fishman preamp and a Fishman pickup. They sound absolutely fantastic, like much better than an awful lot of other stuff on the acoustic bass front.
I would say, even looking at it there kind of reminds me of kind of what they play like and what they sound like and what they feel like overall. I would say it's the first one that we do that is significantly better than the rest of the acoustic basses that we do. And we do some other high-end stuff as well, but I would say it's the first one that you really go, wow, this is a proper instrument, rather than an instrument where you might have 3 electric basses plus I've got a cheapy acoustic bass as well for when I feel like it. This is the instrument for people who have made a conscious choice to go, I want to get a good acoustic bass.
I agree. A good sized body. I mean, really cool in the fact that you've got the offset sound hole. The sound hole is actually over the upper horn, so it's not below the strings where it would conventionally be, which makes it look awesome. And
hence the Alien name. It doesn't look like a conventional instrument in any way.
Absolutely. And one thing that an awful lot of acoustic basses miss is that it has a massive body to it in depth as well as in size, and I think that's a huge essential for making a functional acoustic bass.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're absolutely brilliant. I'm a really big fan of them. Cannot believe the price tag that they're hitting.
Well, they've changed the construction because they used to be made in Germany with the rest of the Warwick basses, and they used to come in for just under $1,000.
That's right, like just under $1,000, and they were and back there they were now they're laminate spruce and laminate agathis for the back and side,
and they're made in Korea now with the rock bass side of things.
Yeah, same side, but they're still that doesn't mean that you're taking a massive dip in quality. These things are absolutely.
Having played the two, I would say there is not that much difference between the two. No. And what price are they coming in at now?
They're coming in at $449 now. I mean, you're still getting like a solid mahogany neck on these things, and it's still that kind of Warwick cut neck. It still feels
so boomy. That's what I find. Because they just feel like
they feel like I said, they're the first one that feels like a proper solid in choice.
Because I think one of the problems with like sort of the cheaper acoustic basses is they can feel a little bit forced. They can feel a little bit like
reliant on the preamps.
Well, not even that. I mean, even acoustically, you know, the sort of the construction, and you know, I'm not naming names because, quite frankly, I can't name any names. You know, this isn't an area of my that I know a huge amount about. But I know that when I've picked up some acoustic basses in the past, you sort of go, okay, well, what is this giving me? Where am I?
Yeah, like, what can you get from this that you can't get from an electric bass?
Absolutely, and I think the Aliens really give you something.
I agree. I completely agree. Before playing this, if
something out of this
if
world,
someone wanted to play an acoustic bass. Oh, I see. The Out of This World. We didn't laugh at the Out of This World joke. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well done,
But
Jay.
before I played the Alien, I really, if people asked to play an acoustic bass, I would kind of challenge why they wanted an acoustic bass over an electric bass, considering that you can get such kind of earthy tones out of a P bass or even out of a jazz bass if you roll off the upper pickup. Or, you know, really anything passive, you can get such lovely woody tones out of. What advantage are you getting in an acoustic bass? In that they're still not loud enough that you can't play them plugged in.
Yeah.
So where you know, what's the advantage?
Yeah, kind of why do you want one? And the Alien is really the first one.
Yeah,
almost
absolutely.
that sounds like an acoustic bass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Gents, let's do some staff picks. And I think at least a couple of these might also be kind of like almost like diamonds in the rough, like forgotten gems.
Well, are you looking at me?
No, I was thinking about Matt Knight.
Okay,
mainly.
yeah.
All right,
but
just-
let's Jay, do yours first, and then we'll go from there. Because
okay.
yours kind of is as well.
Well,
Don't forget that Matt's changed his.
No, I know. The one he's changed it to, I think, is the.
to a certain degree, that what I mean, when I was thinking of a staff pick this week, I was thinking about what the topic of conversation was in general, and I went in. I sort of had a walk around the shop, and I went, okay, well, what haven't I played for a while? What have I forgotten about? What is here that I haven't played for a while, and I look at every day, and the Gibson Zoot Suit, Gibson Zoot Suit Les Paul. You look at it. And you go, it's the Zoot Suit. That's cool.
It's a rainbow.
Where are we? And okay, so the theory behind the Zoot Suit. Now, I don't know how many people know about the Zoot Suit, but the Zoot Suit is an extremely colourful Les Paul, and by that, what I mean is it is a number of layers of ply. I think
It's compressed
ply. Okay,
birch ply.
And the thing is as soon
That's
as
just a
soon,
longer
and
name for saying ply.
even now when I'm saying it's ply, I'm going. All I'm thinking of is Year 7 DT. I'm thinking of Year 7 design technology, taking a piece of ply and going. And I remember the first thing that I did when I was going. This is a segue for you as well.
Hey.
Going back, the first project I did in design technology when I was in Year
I cannot
7.
believe how much of your life you managed to wangle into this.
You know,
Was
segue
so
doesn't
good.
mean go off and tell a story for half an hour.
Well,
Segue
that's
means
what I do.
move into something else.
No. Okay. Well, let's tangent. The first what I remember is the first project I had was I was given a piece of ply, and the
you
DT
made a Zoot
teacher,
suit out of
the
it?
DT teacher went, right. You've got to make something that you can't destroy. You've got to make something that you can't destroy. And I made something out. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. The point is that constructed in an efficient manner, plywood sounds really, really bloody good. It's really heavy because there's so much wood in this Les Paul. And I plugged it in at the end of the day when it was just me and Matt in the shop. He was doing work and I was playing guitar. Yeah, and honestly, it sounded awesome. Now I make no secret of the fact that I'm not a big fan of the neck pickup, but in the with the Zoot Suit, you've got a P90 in the neck, and I am a big fan of P90s. So I plugged it in, went onto the neck pickup, and it sounded like I had plugged in a Big Buff.
Yeah.
It sounded absolutely massive. Now, looks wise, they're not for everyone. They are, it's compressed ply. Layers and layers of compressed ply that are bleached in various colours to give a sort of rainbow
colours.
finish. And yeah, they're not for everyone. I think it was the guitarist from the Cherry Poppin' Daddies who were this 90s sort of ska like funk band.
Wow. I didn't know this.
Yeah. I think it was his signature. I only really know him because I had a compilation of Operation Ivy songs, and they were on there.
Yeah.
But Joe's got his hands in his head. Wait, no, head in his hands. It's got but yeah, anyway, the Zoot suit is really cool, and it sounds wicked, and it sounds wicked. And so yeah, that's my stealth pick. Weird, wonderful.
It sort of fits into that category.
It does.
What I would say about the Zoot suit is I really want them to do something with that construction that looks more traditional, because I think it would confound a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think
a lot of people don't give the actual audio of that guitar the time of day.
Totally.
I think you're completely correct. And I will, full disclosure, hands up, I was very much one of those people.
It's something that you instinctively, and I think a lot of people listening to this will want to hate, and not just because of the looks, but because of the concept of a guitar made of ply.
Plywood.
It sounds awesome. It sounds, if you listen, we've actually done there's a YouTube video up on our YouTube channel. The guitar sounds one of the best guitars that we've recorded, and that we have a demo for online.
Yeah, it's important to remember that I think is easily forgotten, and I think that guitar brands kind of encourage us to forget. There is no monarchy or class system to wood, and ply happens to sound very good.
Yeah, it really, really does. I mean, and I think this is going back to what I was saying. I think when people think of plywood, they think of this really thin piece of wood that you can snap with your fingers. But if you compress it and you build it up in a way, it's the same as everything. It's the way that you use these things. And I don't know if they were the first, but when the Zoot suits came out, with the Zoot suit SGs came out, maybe 4 years ago? I was like, these are rubbish.
Maybe longer than that.
Really? Was it? I was like, these are rubbish. Look at them. They look bad. And then I spent some time with them. I was like, actually, I think these look all right. And I sat down with them and I went,
good.
These sound really, really, really good. Really good.
And on that note, let's not forget all the Masonite Dan Electros.
I had one of those as well, and they're brilliant. It's one of those things that and I think one of the things that the Zoot suit is it's a champion of the avant-garde. It's a champion of the left field. It's a Les Paul, but it's not made of mahogany. It's not even made of alder or ash,
and it's not too
or maple, and it's not. But even at a grassroots level, even at the very basic concept of what a guitar is, it's what's a guitar made out of? Oh, it's made of mahogany or alder or ash or basswood or what? It doesn't have to be
birch ply.
Or your parents' fireplace, but that's what you think of. You don't think of ply, and I think that the Zoot suit, and I think you're very right. I think if they made an Epiphone of a similar construction that was just ebony, that was finished in ebony.
Do a Gibson. Do it at the price point of say an LPJ
or an SGJ,
and make it maybe a gold top. Yeah. So you can't ever see that it's ply.
Absolutely.
So Nick from Gibson, if you're listening in.
There we go. We've given Gibson some free ideas. Matt Knight, what is your staff pick this week? What should people try?
Right, mine is, and after hearing about the amps and then the pedals, I thought it was only fair to go for something that actually was really popular, and then a load of other similar models came out, and then everyone sort of forgot about it, but it's still awesome, and that's the Gretsch Electromatic Baritone.
Oh, dude.
In black sparkle?
Yeah. I think people forgot about it because the Baritone tellies came out and everyone was like, and it's got a humbucker and 2 single coils, and I plug it into my Marshall in it, and it's like rock.
Listen to me play an E chord, which is actually a B chord.
But the Gretsch Baritone, I sold one to a mate of mine who does a lot of guitar tracking in a really big studio in London, and he bought one. I was like, for that sort of stuff you're doing, maybe. And he actually ended up buying a telly baritone and one of these. And I was like, 2 baritones, and he went, Atmosphere. The Gretsch Baritone for David Lynch-esque atmosphere. We were talking about the Strymon Flint, the tremolo and the reverb, like that. And the Bigsby, it just sounds so cool. And I suddenly thought that little Gretsch amp into that Dan Echo, into that
Yeah,
it would sound awesome.
If I remember correctly, now you boys will probably be able to correct me here if I'm incorrect.
I think you're going on to what I was going to say.
When I first started, they were a bass 6.
They were a bass 6.
They were a bass 6, and they were not a baritone. They were tuned E to E, and I think this was a conversation that we had an awful lot when I first started, which was, so what's this tuned to? And you'd be like, And
I think they've...
E?
Yeah, I think they move with the masses.
I think they definitely did.
And actually, we sell bass 6 strings, and I would say buy a set and put them on that, because I don't think
it would be unbelievable.
I think for something different as well compared to a lot of the other bass 6s that are out there, I think this is just cool. Loads of reverb. I think it's not something you would pick up and play like. Well. Yeah, I don't think you'd pick it up and play loads of E and be like, yeah. I think you'd pick it up and find all these kind of weird chords, and you do something like.
But I definitely remember all 6 strings being wound.
Yeah. 100%.
And
they were.
But the problem was at the time, bass 6 was such a anomaly.
But
Gretsch were like, yeah, this is it's a baritone. We'll call it a baritone because it's lower, it's extended range, kind of, but nobody really thought of the bass 6 wasn't on anybody's radar. But that's what this was. It was a bass 6. It was tuned E to E. All the strings were wound, and we would plug it in and go like, yeah, this is wicked, but I don't want to break a string. Because I can't buy any. Because I don't know where we can buy a replacement string. But now, what with the dawn of the bass 6 and
suddenly everyone's released bass 6 strings.
Absolutely, we've got bass 6 strings by Ernie Ball, and we've got Dario,
and Fender do their own sets.
Fender do their own sets as well, and you could easily get one of these and. I reckon get one of these, tune it to Dad.
And actually,
your mind.
One thing worth pointing out is that actually they're a 29-inch scale length, so they're actually
almost bass guitar getting up there.
They're actually 2 and a bit inches longer than a normal baritone. So going E to E would be
easy,
fine.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it doesn't feel that different.
Yeah, check them out. I think we got a video of Lewis playing them.
I have, and they're 400 quid
on
so.
Tube.
Mental. Yeah. So it's cheaper than the Fender Bass 6 anyway.
Yeah. Joe Branton, what have you been playing? What should people try this week?
I'm going to go with a similar line to last week, which again I'm afraid is a touch boring of me. But I have kind of recently discovered them, and I can't believe how ridiculously super cool they are. Dear Dario are doing tape wound bass strings. Now, if you don't know
what,
you, Joe.
What tape wound bass strings?
I'm all about accessories. I think accessories.
It's the forgotten string.
It is the forgotten string. Are we all familiar with tape wound?
No. Tell us what a tape wound string is.
A tape wound string is it's basically a flat wound nylon string that's then wrapped. So they're black. So they look super cool to start with. But they look like the Rotor Sound Nexuses, but of course completely flat wound and made out of nylon, and they're just awesome. So similar kind of concept to flat wounds, in that you will never need to buy another set of strings. They will last for eternity.
It's true. It's true.
You don't need to change them. That's why I've changed all my basses to flats.
Because your skin.
Yes, I'm really poor. That is actually genuinely the reason. But also I've convinced myself. But I like wrestling with a guitar, and because of the incredibly high tension on nylons and on tape wounds and flat wounds, I kind of feel a bit more like it's a fight. It's a fight to get a bend.
Well, people will know these strings. Bassists will know these strings despite never having actually played them, because they are the set of strings that come in all of the same gauges as those orange Rotor Sound strings that you buy, but they are in a green packet that you never buy. They're next to the reds and the oranges that you're like, do I want flatties today or do I want round ones today? Oh yes, there's green ones.
I don't know what they are.
I want oranges, but like, so people will know of tape wounds, but they will have never played them.
Do you know,
I was going to say that they will have known. What I thought you were going to say was they would have known of them because a lot of bassists leave their strings on for 5 years.
Well,
and that is essentially what tape wounds feel like.
Yeah, that's what they feel like and sound like. Yeah, exactly. But that sort of sound has a great characteristic. I mean, I was watching a lot of reviews on them, and people were saying, if you like playing Beatles stuff or things like that. I mean, Paul McCartney didn't use tape wounds, but certainly on kind of through like modern amps and stuff like that.
It's kind of that plummy, rich.
Yeah,
sound.
that really like lack of sustain, but tons of like subby low end. I mean, again, I've kind of started mentioning Billy Sheehan a little bit less over the last few podcasts. Maybe he should have got one for his attitude in his. I don't mean his attitude. I don't mean he's rude. I mean he has a bass guitar called his Yamaha attitude bass. But regardless, anyway. But my other favourite bass player, Juan Aldret, has a jazz bass, a 62, which he strings up with nylon tape wounds. And in an interview with him, he was talking about he did a rigged rundown, and he was talking about the sort of stuff he used them for, and he was saying how he absolutely loves the sound of them, but they're actually very difficult to use because the harder you hit them, the less low end response you get, and they become a lot toppier. So you've got to be really, really careful with kind of how you use them. You kind of have to use a bit of reverse psychology. I love the idea. I just like the idea that they're these strings that you can get great results out of, but you've got to be really cautious with. They're just not as obvious as round wounds.
Well, actually, funny enough, thinking about it, I used to have a Burns Shadows bass. Like, I picked one up through store, and I just remember plugging it in, and I just plugged bass through loads of fuzz.
It was a Bison, wasn't it?
It was a Bison,
Burns
which had them in, and it sounded wicked with loads of fuzz. Yeah.
Oh wow!
Just really clicky.
Yeah, it's
kind
like it almost sounds like just a super down-tuned guitar.
But I think it's important to note for people out there, because if there are bass players listening and they're thinking, well, I don't want that because I'm a very contemporary sounding bass player. Don't be fooled. You're not just going to sound like a double bass if you use tape wounds. They are. You get some great kind of classic bass tones out of these sort of strings, and do not underestimate the amount of old school bass players who would have been using tape wounds. They're a really awesome string and really great. And you can pick up the Diodario nylon tape wounds for less than 30 quid, and you will never need to buy another set. I mean, think about that,
Gents, I do have a staff pick this week, but we're running super long, so I'm just going to tell you what it is and let you go and do the research on your own as to how awesome this is.
It is awesome.
It is awesome.
I'm just going to say a few words. Epiphone, limited edition, Twisted Sister, Les Paul,
God,
Twisted Pink Burst.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't that Pink Burst?
That's all we're going to say about it.
Yep.
Okay. People need to go and have a look at it. Come back to us next week.
Yep.
We've got a few questions. Again, very grateful for people emailing in. We'll give you the email address at the end of the podcast. First up, actually, Carl got to us on Twitter. Carl says, in your opinion, how does the Fender Pawn Shop Basics compare to the Squier Vintage Modified Basics? Matt Knight, you're, I guess, our resident Bass 6 expert.
Yeah.
What do you think?
They do feel very different, but they both feel very, very good. For money. I think, I own a Squier, which we talked about in the podcast, which was the day they came out. I managed to get one, and they are really, really nice. I think they're a little bit more vintage sounding. They've got 3 single coils, and then they've got just like the top cut switch, I think it is, on those. And they're a cool sounding guitar for what, 279. I can't remember the last time we had one in, because they've basically been sold out.
Certainly a touch more traditional.
Yeah, where the pawn shop ones, I think, are a little bit more rocky sounding.
Yeah, a little bit more aggressive. I think
the pawn shop has marketed itself. The pawn shop has more thought about where music is now.
Yeah,
the Squier Vintage Modified Basics is a great example of what the Basics was.
Yeah,
but really, they are very applicable to Tic Tac, and they are difficult to apply in modern music. They're difficult to find a slot for. They're really cool, but difficult.
Because that big bridge pickup that you've got on the pawn shop one is definitely something that you could easily use just as you could just play chords over the top of whatever it is you're already playing.
I think that pickup's gone in there because they've gone, okay, right, who's going to play this? Bassists or guitarists? And I think that humbucker is actually bang there for guitarists.
Yeah, I think so.
To give it kind of that top on the right on the bridge that you kind of wouldn't get out of the ordinary.
I mean, I love my Squire one, but we were discussing it the other day about changing pickups, and could you put normal pickups in there, or would you have to necessarily put a Jaguar style pickup in? And I think they're great, but for someone like me who is a guitarist, I think the pickups you would probably change them if you're going to use it in maybe more of a guitar sense. But if you're a bassist, you would probably be fine with it, because it's got more that traditional kind of thuddy bass sound. Like you say, with the pawn shop one, you could probably use it. So maybe then
we can boil it down to it depends what you're using it for.
Yeah, definitely. If you're willing to get involved in starting to mod things, if you want to switch pickups out, which not the easiest thing to do with a kind of Jaguar style pickup configuration. No. I guess you're right. If you're a guitarist, maybe think about the pawn shop.
Yeah. If you're a bassist, into football, etc., maybe think about the vintage modifier.
Well, yeah, that's a good shout for a band.
I'm still waiting for that custom shop order. Come on! Someone tell me they want a custom shop bass 6.
Yeah, that's the one that you really want to go for.
Green sparkle, tortoiseshell guard, matching headstock.
I don't think I spoke about this.
Lasers.
When I put on,
lasers.
Lasers.
Yeah.
I put on some gigs here and there in Brighton, and I put on this band Football etc., who's spoken about a few times, and that was my first real sort of entry into the world of bass 6. One of the girls in Football etc. uses a bass 6, and I spoke to her about it at the time, and I was like, so that's a custom shop one, right? And she was like, yeah, and I was like, wow, it's so good. And she's like, oh wait, you know what this is? I'm like,
shell pink.
Absolutely, it's a shell pink custom shop basics, and it is one of the best looking instruments I have ever seen.
She uses it incredibly.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So it will be. I mean, I couldn't even begin to approximate the amount of money it would cost. I would say it will be a lot of money. But if you are into that sort of thing, and you want to roll with it, it will be incredible, absolutely incredible. Like, you should definitely get in touch with Matty or me and be like, listen, I listen to the podcast
right now.
Let's go. Basics.
What I would say about the basic stuff, certainly the more you spend, the quality does get better. But as we've just mentioned, maybe if you're a bass player and you want something a bit different, or if you're a guitarist and wants to get into modding, then have a look at the Squire, because that is the way to go. So Chris via email, who joined us last week, he said that last week's one was the first podcast that he listened to. Thanks for emailing in, Chris. Chris says, on the whole, do you find that people who buy signature guitars / amps / pedals purchase them on the basis that they're a fan of the player, or do people buy them simply because they're great instruments / bits of equipment? Matt
this
Knight.
is a really good question.
It's a great question.
It's probably the best question that we've ever had.
I think this
more people think of questions like this. This is a great question.
This is. I read this question earlier today, and I sort of sat back for a few minutes and went, yeah. And that was exactly the conversation that we had when we first got here, Joe, wasn't it? It was like, I'm looking forward to this. We could do a whole podcast on this. And I think it kind of depends, to a certain degree, it kind of depends on A, the artist, B, the individual, and C, the item. So I've basically deconstructed this into three idiot questions, which I'm asking myself. But as a whole, no, the first thing that comes to mind is a Slash SL5.
Yeah.
So the Slash SL5 is the new Marshall valve amp, 5 watts. We've spoken about it briefly before. It's kind of loosely based on the Jubilee or the AFD 100, which is the most recent Slash head. But it's it kind of combines that with the Marshall Class 5, which was this incredible amp that we all got excited about maybe 5 years ago, which was a fully valve 5 watt guitar amp. And I think you've got people from all spectrums going through it. You've got people who come in and they go, yeah, I only ever listen to Guns N' Roses and I want to sound exactly like Slash. And then you've got other people who come in and they go, I want a really good small home use valve amp. And both of those people gravitate towards the SL5. Then you've got something like perhaps the Dimebag Wah, where I think you've got, you know, it's very much that super trebly wah sound.
Yeah, like really, it's super aggressive.
It's super aggressive. You know, if you're in a blues band, you don't want the dimebag wah.
No.
You know, but like, and I think if you're going for that sort of thing, then that's the thing that you buy. But then you've got sort of the anomalies, sort of halfway in between. You know, another thing that comes to mind is the the Strat with no trem, the Billy Corgan.
Yeah, well,
Billy Corgan?
Billy Corgan's, I would say, actually, and I was thinking about this for the topic that we were talking about earlier, the kind of forgotten gems. The
Robert Cray?
That's exactly who I was thinking of. That guitar, I think there's probably not enough Robert Cray fans to say everyone who buys one of those is a Robert Cray fan.
I completely agree, and I think one of the things that's cool about that is people go, I really like Strats. I really like Strats. I think they look cool. I think they sound cool. But I never use a trem. I don't need a trem. And I think that's what's cool about, because I don't think I've already forgotten his name. I don't think the Billy Corgan's got a trem either, does it?
No, that's fixed bridge too.
Yeah, so those two are great Strats that don't have trems, and I think both of them are, you know, I think people who are into Smashing Pumpkins and people who are into that Robert Cray sound will gravitate towards those, but also people who want the instruments, you know, for the functional purposes. And that's why I think this is a really interesting question. I think we could do an entire podcast on something like this.
I agree. I'm annoyed that you posed this last. I mean, I even think on the bass front, for example, I saw a couple of weeks ago a math band called Codes in the Clouds, and the bass player was playing a Marcus Miller. You know,
I think the Marcus Miller is the perfect example of why this question is not quite as easy as it seems in the first place. Is because it's a signature model that offers things that you can't get anywhere else.
No,
and I do think you're right. I think we should maybe take this over into maybe next week's podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm fully into this.
Okay.
I've been brewing up answers, but I'm like, we'll be here forever.
Sorry, Chris, but we're actually going to give you a good chunk of a podcast.
Well, we'll give you a full podcast perhaps next week when we're going to this further. But that's a little taste, I guess, a kind of what our answer is. But we'll extend this next week as we've gone hugely over time this week.
Almost epically.
Let's wrap up and we'll carry on next week. If you want to get in touch, if you want to send us a question like Carl and Chris, please do email in podcast@gak.co.uk. We'll always try and answer your questions, and they may even get spun out into a full podcast. Who knows? You can also get in touch with us via Twitter. And I'll probably end up answering that. We're on Twitter @GAK_co_UK. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/GAK music. Or if you want to talk to me, the best way to get hold of me these days is on Twitter myself, Mark_random. Jay Cross, how can people get in touch with you?
You can shoot me an email at j.cross@gak.co.uk, or still Twitter, JAYBM1, where my friend, actually this was a thing you were tagged in as well, my friend Staniel emailed me again, tweeted me again this week saying that he, based on the podcast, has bought a couple sets of the Dario balanced tension bass strings. So we're all about hearing about what people have bought or not bought, but mainly bought, based on what we've said on the podcast. So please tweet in and tell me what I've put you off buying. Thanks.
Matt Knight, how can people get in touch with you?
You can email me at matt.knight@gak.co.uk, or you can tweet me, and I've been getting loads of fans, which is good.
Fans.
I like it.
Matt Knight, bad at the internet.
Well, the thing is, I've seen to post things at the shop of me, it's a counter, and then loads of
followers.
Oh, whatever. People like it.
You sound like my mum.
I'm going to put it out there.
Mum on Facebook.
I think I've had more followers than you guys, so, you know.
How many have you got?
More importantly, how many fans have you got? And if people want to be your fan,
where can people be your fan?
You can be my fan at Matt_Knightsy Cool. I need to go.
By the end of...
Seriously, I'm going to miss my train. I'm going to get up to 11 o'clock.
Joe Branton, where can people find you on the internet?
On the Tinternet, you can email me at joe.branton@gak.co.uk, or if you fancy tweeting me, you can tweet me at Yosif_900.
Well, thanks very much for listening. Do join us again next week when I guess we're going to be talking about why would you buy a signature guitar?
Yeah.
No, we should do it like a debate. We should have people motioning for and people motioning against.
I'm all about that. People tweet in, email, send us Facebook abuse. Tell us why.
Or why not.
Tell us why. Tell me why signature guitars are the worst thing ever to happen to guitars, and tell me why your favourite guitar is a signature guitar.
Oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to get Bang Christopher Hitchens on y'all.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Farewell.
Upright bass.
Upright bass.